a lot of businesses will fall if FDA says yes to psychedelics like big pharma. I think there's a lot of stigma around psychedelics. This was like, wow, a government investing in us, and we were their first ever investment. I mean, their first ever investment was in a psychedelic company tackling mental health. I see a bright future for psychedelics. It will be hard, but I see a bright future.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Science VC, a podcast about deep tech startups, venture capital, and more. I'm JP Orlov, and my guest today is Victoria Costa Paz. Vicky is the CEO of EYWA, a biotech startup that produces psychedelics for mental health treatments. EYWA was founded in Uruguay and made history as the first ever investment from the Uruguayan government VC fund. Today, I'm discussing with Vicky the fundraising process for a startup working with psychedelics and the stigma surrounding the industry. Expect to learn how to show commercial traction before regulatory approval, the investor's perception of psychedelics, how intellectual property shapes an R&D roadmap, and much more. Hi Vicky, thank you very much for doing this. It's great to have you here. So, I wanted to start with the beginning of EYWA, and I was really curious if you could take me to how you met your co-founder.
I met Paola in Gridx incubation process. So Gridx is this company builder that's kind of like a Tinder between scientists and entrepreneurs. So I really, really wanted to become an entrepreneur. I was really into biotechnology, but just didn't have that great idea. So thanks to Gridx, I could start meeting a lot of scientists. But when I met Paola and she told me what she was doing with psychedelics, her studies, so Paola had been studying psychedelics for more than 10 years. And when she taught me what psychedelics could do for mental health, I was like, okay, this is going to be super challenging, but I think this might be interesting. So we started working together like, okay, let's start to collaborate and understand if we can understand each other while thinking, I don't know, a business model, while trying to understand what the problems of the industry are. And we suddenly realized that we really complemented each other. So yeah, we decided to build EYWA together. I'm telling you the short version because it was a really, really long process in which I also talked with other scientists. Paola also talked to other entrepreneurs. But in the end, in the really, really end of this acceleration process or incubation process, we ended up choosing each other. So I'm really happy it was this way. This was already 2 years ago, a little bit more. So I'm really, really happy we're still here and still learning from each other.
Great. Take me to that moment where you both decided to work together. What was like?
So it was almost like the deadline to a pitch critic. So 20 couples are made with like scientists and entrepreneurs, but they would always invest in 10. We were just like planning for the final pitch and what the business model is going to be, the size of the market, our strategy, our technology, our IP. And suddenly when we get to the slide of the team, Paul is like, hey, you're the CEO, right? Yeah, you're the CEO. Come on. And I was like, is this a proposal? And I definitely said yes, like let's go, let's do it. At that moment, I had my full time job. I was working in a fintech startup in the growth team, and then when we got the investment of Redux, I was like, oh, okay, now I have to jump, and I did.
If you could go back to that moment and give yourself an advice, what would that advice be?
Probably like dreaming big from the start. Like normally in Latin America, we're not that used to ask for a lot of money or aim for the biggest markets, like billions, you know? It looks like too much, but if you really plan for it, it takes the same time to plan something that for a 1 billion industry, it's to a 400 billion industry. So if you can aim for the highest from the beginning, I think that that is the best advice I could have gave myself. But somehow when you start, you have like this imposter syndrome that it's really, really normal, that it's like, oh no, I can't ask for that much. Um, this is really, really common in Latin American startups, but accelerations like Redux and other accelerations, traveling, understanding other cultures, like remove that from you.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that here in Latin America there's like this ceiling, at least at the beginning?
I think that there are two factors. So there's a cultural and historical factor, which is like we're normally doing more with less resources. That is good. I think that that is good for the education, for training, because then you go to another country and you're a really resourceful person with a lot of energy. But on the other hand, I think it's the market because we are used to something. Maybe there are not a lot of science VCs. So um, there are not that good deals out there that can give you the opportunities to grow when no one believes in you. So yeah, maybe it's less money for more equity, and this is because there's not a big market for it. Because if there were like a lot of critics, a lot of Ganesha labs, or a lot of investors in science, probably it would be different.
Great. And talking about markets, why build a biotech startup about psychedelics from Latin America?
Why not?
Why not?
I think that pharmaceutical processes in general should start going into biosynthetic processes for sustainability purposes, like total chemical synthesis that is mostly using the pharmaceutical processes is really damaging for the ecosystem. And they throw away a lot of toxic waste. It's expensive. Sometimes it can be hard to scale. It can be dangerous for the people that do it. So they are already on this track. That's reason one. Reason two is today we get psychedelics via total chemical synthesis. That's too expensive and that stagnates R&D because people in different universities want to like do trials, do different essays with GMP pharmaceutical grade psychedelics and they can't because it's really expensive. They are your university, but those are the people that are going to teach us how to take psychedelics in a safe way and for which indications. Because it's not just mental health. There's a lot of potential for gut health, inflammation, etc. Um, and biosynthesis is right in the middle between like doing an extraction and a purification of a mushroom, which is a huge agricultural process, and the total chemical synthesis. You can do a really scalable process with pharmaceutical grade quality, and it can also lead you to cheaper substances because biosynthesis is cheaper. And what we developed at EYWA is a really short synthesis route. So most of our competitors in biosynthesis are doing 7 steps. We can do 3 steps towards getting to psilocybin. One of the funny things is that, well, when talking about Gridex, when Gridex invested in us, they invested just with a tech. We didn't have any patents, anything developed. So the good thing of that is that you can think the science and the business from the start. So we said, if we're going to build a platform, let's do it for many molecules, not just psilocybin. Let's do it for DMT, 5-MeO DMT, and bufotenin, which are some other psychedelics that are really, really studied. The bad part is that it takes longer to develop what you want to develop, and maybe you dilute a little bit more um, in the process of getting results and then looking for more rounds, etc.
But again, like we said in the beginning, let's aim higher, right?
Exactly, exactly.
I wanted to go one step back and ask you if you could explain in simple English what biosynthesis is. It was really clear how you outlined the advantages and why you're pursuing this route, but I was really curious if you could explain it on simple terms.
So normally, what I say when I explain biosynthesis is you choose a microorganism from the world. This could be a bacteria, it could be a fungus, an algae, and you teach that microorganism to produce something it wouldn't produce at scale. And then there's a part of learning bioinformatics, AI in some cases, in which you kind of learn about that microorganism to try to leverage those conditions and change and optimize the conditions in which that microorganism grows to make more yield out of that. So in our case, we chose this microorganism. We taught this microorganism how to make psilocybin and these other compounds. So we inserted the genes, we combined some enzymes, and then now we are on the moment that we are learning about that microorganism that produce psilocybin and what can we do for him to produce more. Is it changing the temperature? Is it feeding it with another enzyme? Is it changing this or that? There are like a lot of variables.
So you are teaching a microorganism to do something that wasn't able to do before. You are able
Exactly.
to make it cheaper than with other methods, and it's scalable, right?
Exactly. So there are some companies, for example, like I met no, I met a scientist some months ago. They were doing the same, but to make any plant or any flower bioluminescent.
Wow.
So for the purpose of that plant glowing.
And how about quality? Because you can make it do something new, cheaper, and scalable. How does it compare with the other methods of production?
Great. So quality, um, like in my experience, is in which settings you are doing your process, right? So good manufacturing practices or GMP is the standard of quality that we use in the pharmaceutical industry to say, okay, this can be consumed by a human being. And normally GMP stands for the cleanness, the regulation, compliance of that space, and the processes you use. So to be GMP qualified, it's a process that it takes a lot of time, but it's basically the processes you use, the machines, how your protocols of cleaning are, the protocols of producing. So that is the standard of quality.
Right. And is that about the facility that you use to produce? Is it about the method that you use to produce, or is it both?
Both.
Both, right?
You can also so it's normal that startups don't get to GMP facilities or they don't do their own GMP facilities until they don't go through the same processes in a non-GMP facility like in lab scale. Um, because also hiring a GMP place it's way more expensive than trying lab scale or renting some space.
What molecule are you currently focusing on?
Well, so the first molecule is psilocybin. And the reason we are prioritizing psilocybin is because psilocybin as a molecule already passed a phase 2 trial. So there are a lot of studies already that definitely are incentivizing different pharmas around the world, institutions to do more research with this molecule. But also, we are doing our own formulations and we want to take them to approval. So, our sandbox will be Brazil. We're partnering there with Albert Einstein Hospital, and the idea is to show Anvisa, which is the local regulator, that okay, this passed a phase 2, it's already in phase 3. These are the results. It's just psilocybin inside a pill. Look, in Canada and in Australia, they are already prescribing these for treatment-resistant depression. So something that it's in my mind all the time is how can you generate traction with what you have because traction will uh, make you learn a lot, will make you like put your put your team out there, like learning more about the industry, and and this is our way to doing traction before in psychedelics, which are already illegal, and well, of course, also commercializing active ingredients.
I mean, it's always hard to show traction before getting regulatory approval, and it's key to show that to investors and create some interest around the technology and also the future because it's not only a slide deck, it's also showing something more tangible. And I can only imagine how harder that is with psychedelics.
Yes, yes, totally. It's hard. So for us, it's thinking a little bit outside the box because we are not just creating a product, we are kind of creating an ecosystem. So the conversations inside EYWA right now are like, hey, what is going to be our role in education? What is going to be our role in with the pharmas, with the different stakeholders, with the medical plans? We want to sell something that we don't have an ecosystem yet. So we have to create it.
Why create that ecosystem today? Why it wasn't created 10 years ago?
So I think there's a lot of stigma around psychedelics because of the 70s, 80s. I think that the stigma arises because, well, these substances came out from the lab super early without education about world in which set and setting to have them. Also, the political context at that moment, maybe it was really rigid, and these substances brought to the people like this thing of, well, liberation, trying new things. And that obviously for the government sometimes is not the best option. So I think that after um, starting again trials and studies and showing the data, people began to trust psychedelics again. So I think that the best way to combat stigma is with data. That's why having these active ingredients in GMP conditions and doing more studies for me is really, really important. Because if different institutions can't study, can't do research, can't show data, then the industry is not going to grow. We really need them.
And what is the data showing?
So so far, for example, for treatment resistance, resistant depression, psilocybin is working immediately and 4 times better than regular antidepressants. And they have half of the relapse rate. Like when you see someone that has taken psilocybin 1 year after taking psilocybin, like a unique dose, they have half of the relapse rate of, compared to someone that has been taking antidepressants like every day, constantly. So I think that that is massive. But the most important thing for me is today antidepressants. I'm not against antidepressants. They took away from depression a lot of people, but the way they work, they are symptom mitigators. So probably you're taking a pill in the morning to cheer up, and then you have to lower down, you have to relax. So for that, you take another pill in the most of the cases. But coming to psychedelics, or psilocybin particularly, what psilocybin does in your brain is turning off your default mode network. This is the network responsible for rigid thoughts, allowing you to generate more neuroplasticity and creating new paths and breaking negative loops of behavior common in depression, anxiety, addictions, PTSD, eating disorders. So it's a way of healing that to me it sounds more genuine, like really believing in your solution, really believing that there are alternatives to that thing you generated so rigidly throughout many years in your life.
Wow, so you're saying that there are many people that are stuck in a negative loop, and thanks to being able to change that, like the word says, neuroplasticity, the plasticity part is which allows to get out of that negative loop, right?
Exactly. I think that that is really, really important. And it's really common, from our 7 years old to our 20 years old, we really reinforce this default mode network. It's really common. There is like all our traumas, our childhood traumas, how our parents taught us to do things, all of your experiences, how you've grown.
How much of this is backed by scientific data? We can talk a lot about the advantage of the possibility of breaking out of a negative cycle. You mentioned that there is half of the relapse rate, but what is the data showing, and is this helping the psychedelic space?
Well, the data is showing that people are really changing their minds after having a psychedelic experience. Also, well, I don't remember the exact percentages, but for people using tobacco and alcohol, you have people that uh, totally quit tobacco or alcohol for years. And
Wow.
so this is really impressive. It's really, really impressive. And something really interesting is there's a scientific debate at the moment, which is the subjective experience in the hallucination part needed to change your mind, or just with the neuroplasticity effect, we are okay. So there are some companies already in the psychedelic space developing molecules similar to psychedelic without the hallucinogenic effect, but with neuroplasticity effect. This can translate into a more accessible uh, treatment uh, with no hallucinogenic parts. So it could work, but there's another part, another scientific group that says, hey, if you don't have this subjective experience that is going to show you a lot of your traumas, solutions to those traumas, and make you really feel and experience things, is probably not going to be as effective.
Wow. So you're saying that there's this possibility of creating neuroplasticity without the hallucinations? The first time that I hear about this.
Yes, yes, it's totally possible. Also, when people are meditating, they generate mini neuroplasticities. you know, so of course, with the psychedelic, this would be like by 1,000 or more. I mean, it's like a really big shot of that. But yeah, it is possible. They are trying this in scientific research. There's a lot of scientific research around these new molecules. I'm more for subjective experience, um, because it takes some preparation. It takes to be brave to experience that moment, and then for your process of integrating what you have seen in your trip, how we say it, you can get really important information. When I first experienced psychedelics, my macrodose, I saw some things about my family history that really helped me, like connecting the dots in some different ways, and to heal and to be thankful for things probably I wasn't grateful before, and that made me a different person from that moment till today. So if I was going to recommend someone to do it, I would definitely recommend it with a trip.
Yeah, of course. We are always talking about a safe environment with the supervision of a trained professional. It's very different than just doing it on your own,
Exactly.
just on a random place with your friends, correct?
Yeah, normally this is a treatment that you do it with your eyes closed, laying down, probably listening to special music. I really recommend the John Hopkins playlist. It's in Spotify.
This show is brought to you by We Are Palta. Communicating science and its impact through your business can be hard. We Are Palta has a team of scientific communicators, designers, and specialists dedicated to bridging the gap between science and community. Having worked with more than 25 deep tech startups and VC firms, We Are Palta offers from creating your brand identity to managing your social media. Go to wearepalta.com, that is wearepalta.com, and learn more. And going now into the business model, how is EYWA planning to bring this to market? You mentioned pharma companies a lot, but I'm really curious on putting this into a more tangible plan.
We're still building our empire business models, because what I told you, I mean, this is kind of like generating a whole ecosystem, and we are building that. But as I said, traction first. So how we get traction first? Selling our active ingredients to different companies. These companies can be pharma companies wanting to develop their own generics or just doing some tests. R&D institutions like universities wanting to do some trials or essays with psilocybin. Distribution companies in locations where this is legal under prescription, for example, Canada and Australia. We already have some LOIs in Australia for a company that wants to distribute so to some pharmas there. So those would be like the mainstreams for active ingredients. And then, well, we're developing our own formulations that we want to take to market. And so a final pill, let's say. And well, that has a totally different business model. We don't want to fall yet in licensing our process and everything. We want to like really aim for the highest and protecting our IP. So our IP today is one of the most valuable things we have besides our team and this approach towards ecosystem building. So yeah, what to summarize, traction first with ingredients to foster the ecosystem, but still building the empires.
IP is definitely key. I'm curious about how IP is shaping your R&D roadmap.
Definitely. So, well, it's not really normal that you get to create a unique microorganism that can do 4 molecules, right? So, um, that is our IP. That's what we are protecting. We're not just protecting that, we are protecting different ways to bypass this process. So, this is one important thing. And then there's another part of the process that we keep as industrial secret. So, it's not that easy doing an upstream and downstream process in biosynthesis. It can take ages. So we think that some parts is worth protecting, some parts is worth keeping them like as a secret.
And why aren't big pharmas developing this?
So pharmas are tertiarizing this. They prefer to buy their active ingredients from companies that are fully dedicated to do active ingredients. So the best companies in doing this are more in China and India. They know how to do these processes at scale and super cheap prices. So they're tertiarizing more than doing these processes themselves.
And if I'm a pharma company, why should I work with EYWA?
Well, now there are a lot of options to buy psilocybin from a company. I'm sure at some point it will, but since we are starting now and we are working on implementing bioinformatics and artificial intelligence to have the best yield possible for each of our compounds, what I see in the future is that EYWA has the best quality compounds and with the best yield possible and the most competitive prices.
And how does bioinformatics and AI translate into creating new molecules or new formulations?
To creating new molecules and formulations, we're not using that yet. We are using these to enhance our microorganism in order to produce psilocybin at its best yield. There's a part that you can feed, I don't know, you can use bioinformatics with the existing literature, but when you want to jump into like pure and hard AI, you have to get your own results to start feeding that algorithm for that algorithm to predict. Something I hate is when companies and startups put AI just because putting AI,
You have to.
you're going to get.
You just have
You
to.
have to. You just have to. But I don't want to lie or to how we say in Argentina, sell smoke. um, I don't know the English word for that expression, but it takes a lot to get to a real AI model. So it's okay to say like, hey, we're building this, but to build this, we need more information. We need to get more results of our microorganism, and we're building that. And why we're going to be competitive in 5 years is because we're starting now. We're investing in this now, and our main differential is that we are not adopting an horizontal strategy. We're not doing cannabinoids, proteins, flavors, and psychedelics. If we had an horizontal approach, we would probably not be prioritizing psychedelics because it's not what is going to generate traction in the short term. So with our vertical approach, it's like, hey, we're going to invest in this that we know is really risky, but we're going to tackle education, ingredients, bioinformatics, AI, formulations. We're going for the whole vertical, and I think that that is what is going to make the whole difference for mental health and psychedelics.
And why do you think other companies are tempted to go that broad? Is it to show a bigger TAM for investors? Is it because they are unsure of what product they are developing? Is it something else?
Well, I think that platform businesses are are really well known for being successful and covering different industries, can be translated into more products, um, growing bigger, etc. So I really support that. I think that it gives more like reliability to an investor. Um, so if I put myself in the shoes of an investor, it's like, okay, if they don't do it with flavors, they can try out with proteins, and this is going to sell because you can put this in a cereal bar and blah whatever. So I think it is okay to go that way, but your strategy and your team expertise needs to be different. It needs to be like more in the process, in like leveraging the capabilities of different microorganisms, not just one. You need to have some experience in different industries, understand where the pains of each industry and each product are. You're building an horizontal monster. In our case, it didn't make a lot of sense to go that way because we are experts in psychedelics, in the business of psychedelics and mental health. And we know that there's a lot of potential, not just in psilocybin, but also in DMT, 5-MeO DMT, and the rest of the ibogaine. Ibogaine for addictions, to cure addictions is great. And our expertise is there. You know, Paola has spent 10 years of her life studying the neurological paths of these molecules, how they act and how they can help people.
And I can imagine that if you go too broad, too horizontal, you are unable to leverage the learning curve that you just went through. I mean, if you start developing a process for psilocybin and then you jump into flavors, there's a lot of things that get left out on the process of building that new way of producing.
Of course. And uh, there's another mission also, there's another purpose. Uh, if we really want to impact mental health, we have to do it this way. And we probably have to take the challenges and the risks of creating a new industry from zero, a new market, because it's not legal in every country yet. And so part of our job is like putting ourselves together with these local regulators and showing the data, showing that the product can be safe, doing the work. Like that's how you build. You need to be reliable. You need to be there. It takes a lot of work, but it's part of the challenge that we like facing.
Talking about moving that mission forward, what do you think regulators need to see more of to be more open on allowing these kind of treatments to get to the market?
The other day I was reading and I found out a chart in which like um all the different substances were displayed, and there was a matrix showing how harmful those substances were in order for yourself and for the others. So alcohol is the most harmful substance out there that is legal. It's harmful for yourself. It's harmful for the others. And then you have, I don't know, a lot of things like cocaine, mescaline, cannabinoids, etc. And last on that list, mushrooms. And mushrooms, the funny thing is that they are not harmful for others if you take them. So that is something that regulators should take into account. Like, hey, what is already legal that is producing a lot of disasters, a lot of mental health problems and health problems overall, that is also leading to costs for the different countries and states, chronic diseases. I think that that data is important to show. And then, of course, the clinical data that psychedelics are showing massive improvements. I think that the way to start convincing and going for more flexible models is okay, let's go for treatment resistant depression. So 40% of the people that suffer from depression have no alternative. They're going to be resistant to regular antidepressants. So psychedelics, they're a really good option. What are we going to do with this 40%? Are we going to like have them with this chronic disease in which they don't want to live anymore? So it's not just the cost that governments have, it's also how that affects to that person's health, their families, their friends, couples. Like it's the whole ecosystem that it's affected. And starting there, then for example, there's another indication I found really, really interesting to start with. So people with terminal cancer and depression, fear of death. Those are cases in which psychedelics can drive really positive impact to those last years of that person and that person's family. Um, I think that that could be really, really impactful. So we could start there.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that when you say costs, they are all costs generated from human suffering.
Exactly.
It's not just a market inefficiency, it's people going through a very, very rough time.
Yeah, exactly. And it really doesn't have to be so long. So my mother experienced depression for 12 years. I mean, this is a lot of time. And I have seen, and from my 7 years old to my 18 years old, the whole process and maybe her trying different drugs, different things, anything seemed to work, like being really, really, really efficient. And if by that moment, a psychiatrist could have like safely prescribed psilocybin to my mother, she would probably save like many years of her life, you know, uh, of less crying, less having bad moments. Uh, it doesn't have to be that long.
I completely agree, and thank you very much for sharing. Um, what role do you think public opinion is playing in this whole conversation? Are you seeing any shift towards a more positive outlook on psychedelics?
Yes, definitely. So I think it's something that will depend more on each country. Of course, that what FDA says, it's going to be really important. But I fear that FDA, with the importance and how people look at FDA, they will take more time. Also, a lot of businesses will fall if FDA says yes to psychedelics, like big pharma. I mean, if big pharma doesn't jump to psychedelics, psychedelic will jump for big pharma, and FDA plays a key role here. So um, I'm more for the Australian and the Canadian model in which psilocybin is rescheduled and can be just prescribed under people that are trained to do this. I think I believe in that model, honestly. So that's why we want to take that model to Brazil and then going country by country doing this with our own formulations. And something that I think that it's really nice and interesting. There are a lot of new media companies speaking about psychedelics, showcasing this data, like helping public opinion. Some organizations that are exclusively dedicated to showing this information to governments to help shaping this government's opinion. One of them is, for example, Parea in Europe. I know the founder, and he's a really admirable advocate for what he's doing and the information he's showcasing around psychedelics. Professor David Nutt in the UK is another one in the Imperial College of London. He has a group that's called Psychedelics Medical Working Group. We are part of that group, and many companies in psychedelics and regulators too. So there are the right things going on. I see a bright future for psychedelics. It will be hard, but I see a bright future.
And what about the VC community? Are they seeing a bright future for psychedelics as well?
I think there are some that definitely see it and they know this will work. But I think that VC wise, we are not in a moment in which venture capital is as risky as in other years, you know? So I think that we are not in the prime time of betting to crazy ideas. So VCs each time want to risk, want less risk. Uh, and definitely psychedelics bring a lot of risk to them. So there are not a lot of VCs that really want to invest in psychedelics. And I totally respect that because they want to the risk and that's their mission. It's also drugs. There are a lot of people having stigma yet with psychedelics and they don't believe in their potential. They see this as a harmful drug or a drug that can potentially open the door to more harmful drugs. And I totally respect that. That's why cycling data in the end is the most important thing. Um, and we have the responsibility of showing that information to speaking. So at EYWA, we try when we have time to do some kind of posts, so showing data and showing in an efficient way. So we are really active in our Instagram, in our LinkedIn. Uh, we really try to do that.
Would you say that investors are your main audience in social media, or is it part of a broader group of people that you're trying to share what you're doing at AWA?
I think that today is mostly the startup and investor ecosystem because they are the ones that today will keep us alive. But also for the people. I mean, there's a lot of people following A1, the data we put in A1, but definitely if I was, I wish I could have like more time and a broader team to dedicate just to communicating information because I think this is really necessary.
We'll get back to talking to Vicky in just 30 seconds, but first, let me tell you about We Are Palta. Raising funds for your startup requires clear and effective communication with your potential investors. That's why We Are Palta works with deep tech companies to highlight your team's strengths and your commercial traction. Discover how graphic designers can enhance your pitch deck by going to the link in the description below or by visiting wearepalta.com. That is wearepalta.com. What part of your value proposition is the one that you feel it's the hardest to communicate to investors?
Our ecosystem building focus because this is not just science, this is not just business and margins. It's also convincing people, speaking with people, trying to understand each stakeholder's view and incentives to really make it work. Uh, I think that that is the hardest thing because you're going to show a number for that. You need to show what you do. You need to show your LOIs, your partnerships, which contests you were able to win, where did you travel, with which people you are networking. Um, it's, I think, ecosystem building is more like a soft skill,
Huh?
and we have a lot of that.
Talking about convincing people, I wanted to ask you about your most recent funding round. What it was like convincing your current investors?
Oops. uh, it was hard. I mean, uh, so our last investors, our last fund investors were the Ganesha Labs. I met them in 2023 in a conference in Miami. So they invited me to their own event to speak and to showcase EYWA. I applied to their accelerator program and they said no. And I was like, okay. And the next year we started talking. I was in Switzerland doing another accelerator program. We have won some money of grants. So we were a little bit more well positioned with a little bit more traction, LOIs. Um, you know, we survived. We showed them we survived. And I think that that is important as well. Like sometimes you met an investor and he just wants to see how your evolution goes and that you are still alive. Eh, so that was the last case with the Ganesha Labs. And then, well, the Ganesha Labs co-invested with Uruguay Innovation Hub, a fund from the government in Uruguay. So for us, this was like, wow, a government investing in us. And we were their first ever investment. I mean, their first ever investment was in a psychedelic company tackling mental health. Um, so that was really special for us. It was really worth waiting, and Ganesha Labs really helped in all this process.
Yeah, congratulations and hats off to Ganesha and also Uruguay.
Yay!
You were mentioning that they saw that you survived, but I'm sure that they also saw how you evolved. Do you agree that a very important part of building relationships with VCs is that they get to know you at a certain point in time and then they get to talk to you again later and see your evolution?
Yes, um, I think that meeting that meeting the people is the most important thing because I mean, so it's hard because you want to keep your company alive. You will like grab the money, but if you can choose the people that is going to be in your cap table, it has to be good people that you can grab the phone and call them and ask them for whatever. So this is a practice. I mean, I do this when I need some kind of advice. I call my investors and I have them updated all the time. So the ideal would be, yeah, like meeting the investor as a person, understanding if you want that person in your cap table or not, if you will see yourself asking for advice to these people, if you see these people can bring you something else rather than money, and building that relationship. So in our case with Ganesha, it was um, updating and everything, and that was good. The best case probably would be, and for my new experiences and what I want to do for our seed round is building the business together also. Like, hey, we have this vision and we plan to do it like this. Like, would you add something to this strategy? Would you change it in some way? Is there something you're seeing I'm not seeing because of your experience? That would be the ideal. To start working together as I did with Paola, towards saying, okay, we're going to be founders together. I think that that's a really special mindset to adopt. That it's really difficult because you want your company to survive, you want the money now, and and for that, it's probably better to get some angel investors that already know you. Angel investors are going to they're not going to do a huge due diligence to you. They're going to trust your vision. That's probably two meetings and you close the deal. We did that as well. We opened a mini angel round where we have like 7 angel investors, and the process, it was a really short process of people trusting us, and these people brought some other people, and they have expertise, diverse expertise.
And talking about smart money, I'm curious, what was the best advice you ever got from an investor?
Oof.
You can say more than one. I know that your investors are amazing.
With Motivated, for example, I have these normal calls, like once a month. I have these calls with Martin, like, hey, I have this crazy idea. And he always brings me to the, okay, but you need to show how this idea connects to your core and that it makes really sense to do this now and how you're going to ask for this investment. So basically, like, The best advice I get from him is like you need to show the backstage of what you're thinking and back that with data, to de-risk your idea. Um, then another really good advice: always thinking global. Always thinking global. It's really difficult to think global. So if I have to give an advice to any entrepreneur, it's like the best way of thinking global is travel. You should go to the conferences of your industry and having those first laps in the face of, hey, what you think you're doing, you're not the only one doing that. And and there you have probably a lot of competitors. So yeah, you can be the best one in Argentina, in Uruguay, in Chile, but go out there and see what the rest of the people are doing and see if you can really add some value to what we're doing, or if you can connect better your company.
There's a whole world out there outside Latin America, and VCs are not betting on companies that are just staying in Latin America, right?
Definitely, definitely.
And you just mentioned a seed round. Are you fundraising anytime soon?
Yes. We are opening our seed round in April. We're raising $4 million, and this money is basically to scale all our molecules and take them to the market. So, as I mentioned, we have some LOIs with pharmas and for distribution in Australia, and we would like to deliver GMP psilocybin to these companies as soon as possible, and well, and start moving the ecosystem.
Before I ask you about the future, what have you been up to these last couple days?
So, well, this particular week, we have been selected along four other Argentinians to participate from Meet the Drapers. So, Tim Draper is this visionary investor in Silicon Valley. He has his own show like Shark Tank. And well, we have been selected to do the Argentina episode. And well, this week was practically preparing for that show, because if you win the show, you get $1 million from Team Draper. And well, for us, also exposing what we do with all of the stigma around psychedelics and mental health. It's really really important. So we have been preparing that at the same time, fundraising and speaking with fans. It has been super uh, exciting and tiring at the same time. But I really encourage you to see the show.
How did you do? How did the preparation pay off?
The preparation was amazing, and we got really, really good feedback from team and from Adam Draper, his son. There were amazing judges. So it was each time you prepare for an acceleration or for a pitch, you know, it's also for the business, because it gets you to reflect. You will always get feedback, and you will bring something really, really, really good for your company. It will really help you to accelerate. Some people are like, hey, don't lose time doing this or that. Yeah, I understand. Like, some accelerations are really, really good. You really need to understand what is the value of that acceleration. It can be the location, the partners, you can do their network. It can be just the feedback of the people. So for us, it was really it was a really good experience. You should see the semifinals.
I'll make sure to catch up on that. What's next for EYWA?
Well, now we are really focused on raising our seed round and to optimize our psilocybin yield. And well, challenging times come ahead, because raising a 4 million seed round is not easy. It's not easy for psychedelics, but I think that this is definitely the time to invest in psychedelics. We are the only ones in Latin America doing this. So if you're an investor on the other side of this podcast hearing to this and you feel you could be interested, call us. But yeah, we're trying to build this whole ecosystem apart from raising the seed round, apart from working on our product. We are still working on the long term vision, which is a bigger thing.
Amazing. For the investors listening to this, what is one thing that you want them to leave with from this conversation? What is one thing that you want them to take out of our conversation?
that if they want to help creating the mental health ecosystem, so and with efficient treatments, and they want to work together with a startup on this, to call us.
Great. So finally, where can people find out more about EYWA and get in touch with you?
Definitely. So in our webpage, which is ewa.bio, in our Instagram, at ewa.bio, and LinkedIn, we are EYWA Biotech. In LinkedIn, we share a lot of information, insights, how we do with rounds, when we get new partnerships, also information about the molecules. So stay tuned in our social media.
Perfect. I'll make sure to link that on the show notes. And Vicky, this has been amazing. Thank you very much for being part of the show.
Juanpi, I love this podcast. Thank you very much for having me here for these amazing questions, and wishing you all the best.
Oh, thank you very much. To talk to you soon and all the best.